Hello, I'm Richard Ridge for Broadway World. Renowned director Julie Taymor is the driving force behind Disney's The Lion King, which is a global phenomenon and one of the most successful and beloved musicals of all time. The Lion King will celebrate its 25th anniversary here at the Minskoff Theater on Sunday, November 13th. And I recently sat with this visionary genius to chat about creating this groundbreaking musical. Thank you so much for sitting with us here and sitting with me for Broadway World.
That's fantastic.
Well, I want to thank you, first of all, for giving the world one of the greatest stage musicals of all time. You're about to celebrate the 25th anniversary. Mm-hmm. How excited are you?
I'm thrilled. Are you kidding me? No, it's great. I feel very old and really very lucky. I think it's that too. It's just, there's a reason it's 25 years old, but many things should be 25 years old, and they aren't. Yeah. So I feel very, very honored and lucky to be here.
You have brought so much joy to, I think, nearly 110 million theater goers around the world. How does that make you feel?
Wow, full.
Yeah.
No, it's great. It means that you can create a work of art that transcends all of our differences. That's what it makes me feel. I like to say, look, you don't need to make your audience just 16-year-old boys or whatever. They can come, they can like it, but so can a 75-year-old Broadway hater, and so can a 4-year-old who believes what they're seeing.
Yeah.
You know, and I adore the fact that that's what I like the best, that you could be a Japanese viewer or Chinese. And we've done it in all these languages. You know, it's not like it's a piece of American theater that goes over as a tourist little bit of a, you know, spice of America. It's not that at all. The Japanese production of The Lion King is equal to the New York production, to the South African production, to the Chinese production, and when we did it in Mandarin in Shanghai. Because we do it with local artists in each of these places. The language becomes adapted, especially humor. Yeah. You know, humor has to be totally local. Doesn't transcend or translate if you just do it exactly. You have to make it specific. The jokes have to be specific. And that's a challenge, and it's been fun. I mean, you read about how Hamilton had to go through 4 years to get the translation. Well, we didn't do that exactly because we didn't have that kind of language, but still it really becomes country specific, culture specific, and that's what makes it so successful and powerful.
Well, let's talk about that, because you oversee all these productions that have been done all around the world, and I think it's like 9 different languages. So what has it been like for you, like going to these countries and working on these productions and watching how audiences fall in love with this show?
Well, I have a team.
Okay, yeah, of course you do.
So when you say oversee, I've done other things besides The Lion King during the 25 years, but what I have is a great team. So I have associate directors and choreographers, and I will go quite often. I've gone and I've done the final casting in a country. So I go over and I will help choose the final cast often, and then I'm gone for a while because I have a great team. We're a family and we enjoy getting together. And then I often am brought in, which I like very much, at the end. And the last week, it's amazing that you'd think it would be set, but it's not set, because if the original director comes, because a lot of my team, some of them weren't there at the very beginning, but if I come, there is an attention that the actors will give to hear that voice. And also because I can see the specifics that are necessary. I don't have to deal with, did he get to this point, you know, is he on his mark, you know, is the lighting hitting, you know, I don't have to do that. I'm really about performance at that point. So it's very fun for me. It's really thrilling. And also I talk to the cast and hopefully talk to them about why they're doing what they're doing, the theater of it. Why are we artists? You know, there's a whole thing where you want to set the company off in the right direction, and what brings you to do this art form. And what should you expect, and what does the audience expect from this? How should you perform it? How are you going to be fresh 8 shows a week for how many years? We have people in this cast for 25 years. Yeah. I mean, that's just incredible to me. I could never do something for 25 years, but I honor the person who can. And surely they're finding a way to fulfill themselves in the performance. And that's what we talk about. You know, how do you keep things fresh and new and alive? Because in traditional theaters in many places, there's no memorization. You're not doing things on rote. You know, I lived in Indonesia for 4 years, and I saw traditional theater all over Java and Bali and Sumatra. And people, actors in masks, with puppets, whatever, dancers, they improvise for 9 hours. They know their character, but the challenge is that they get together before the performance. These various actors get together in, let's say, Bali, doing mask performance. It's incredible. And they talk about the story that they're going to do that night while women are threading beautiful frangipani flowers and the costumes are being prepared and everybody, the audience is out eating and drinking and getting excited and flirting and all of that. And then these performers start to improvise with the musicians. They're coming from different villages. So what you're watching is a lot of the people, the audiences know these stories. It's just like, you know The Lion King, but you've seen it how many times?
About 12.
Okay, I've seen it a couple of hundred. And so, but each time it can be different because it's live theater. So this is what's very thrilling. I learned this when I was a young theater artist in Indonesia, is watching these artists spar with each other and compete on who is, you know, they knew their part. They knew, okay, I'm Mufasa. I know the limitations. You know, I know the kind of character. It's like soap opera, right? I know the kind of character, but now I'm going to improvise the rest of the evening. And the audience is enjoying that and the slight changes that are happening. I mean, I could go on and on about the kinds of things I learned when I lived in Indonesia and Japan and traveled through on a fellowship in theater. But I try to instill that into this performance, into these companies, which is keeping it fresh and alive and understanding that its power is not just as entertainment, but it's also a healing art form.
Yeah, because that first trip you took there was very life-changing for you in Indonesia, wasn't it?
Completely, yeah. Totally.
So what you took away from that, how much of that influence that you learned there did you use in The Lion King?
It's the most prevalent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just Indonesia. I was also in Japan, so you'll see the inspiration of the techniques from Japan, bunraku. Yeah. Bunraku is the puppet form where 3 people in black manipulate about a 4-foot tall puppet, and the audience is able to see the manipulators and the character, and after 5 minutes they don't see the people in black anymore. Okay, so I didn't do exactly that, but if you look at Taymor, Taymor is an actor, all in green. I didn't want to do black. Black didn't actually fit the environment, so I made him look like the jungle. Even the fabric is all shibori techniques. It's various techniques of cloth printing that this is a little sideways thing, but all the fabric in The Lion King begins white. Everything is hand painted and hand printed. You cannot buy it off the rack. So Taymor is all green, his makeup is green, and he's attached to a puppet in front. He's doing the dialogue for it, but hopefully he's manipulating that puppet so that all of his actor energy is in that puppet, so the puppet is what you really, is the character. That's Taymor. I don't know who this guy in green is, but that's Taymor. The same with Zazu. So the idea that you could see the manipulation, appreciate the artistry of the puppeteer / actor. Nobody I hire or we hire has been a puppeteer before. So you have to know that if they had, that's fine. But it really had, we were casting actors who were not feeling, what would you call it, overshadowed by the puppet or the mask. So we have to cast actors who see the joy in that, you know, who have fun. And when we do the auditions, first they act it out themselves. And sometimes I would say in auditions to my, you know, partners, oh God, I wish we didn't have to do this with a puppet. They're so good. Like the hyenas, oh my God, they're so good. Look at their movement, they're funny, they're this and that. All right, we already decided this is a mask and puppet Lion King, blah, blah, blah. But then you give them the puppets. Yeah. And they're not trained yet, and they haven't had a lot of time. But you can see if they enjoy themselves. If they don't enjoy themselves and it looks like a burden, no matter how great they were, you shouldn't cast them. Because this has to be a partnership.
That is fascinating.
Because you're actually, when you watch the show, I mean, you look at the puppets, which I think is really, really fascinating. Going back to the beginning, what unlocked The Lion King for you of the way you wanted to tell the story and present it? Because it's so visual, it's so big, there's so many beautiful elements to this show. Was there something, do you start the same way when you work on a project? To start on paper?
Yeah, I think in this case, the story. You start with the story. And the Lion King animated film was a 70-minute animated film that wasn't, it didn't feel complete. And it wasn't just me who felt that. The producers said, you know, we know the story needs development. Go ahead. So my background at Oberlin College and even before that in general has been mythology and folklore and the study of shamanism in Northwest Coast Indian culture and a lot of study in Asia and this and that. And I knew what the hero myth and the hero stories required. In every culture you'll find the commonality of this theme of the prodigal son. And that child who's going to come of age and take a very difficult journey, the hero's journey, has to suffer and has to go through a trial, the trials, in order to come home again and earn the mantle of kingship, which is what happens to Simba. And Simba in the movie didn't really quite do that. So the whole second act, where Simba feels so guilty about the death of his father that he almost, in a kind of anger and taunting of his best friend Timon, he almost kills his buddy. And he goes through this time of dark guilt. And then he's also challenged by Nala, which isn't in the original. So there were a lot of major themes that had to be, they were there, but they had to grow. And I definitely wanted the female presence to be stronger. So in that, I developed the story and I developed Rafiki, Nala, but Rafiki was the one. You've heard that story of how I came. Yeah, that's a, you know, it came from Tuli Dumakare, you know, how this idea. And then, you know, the notion that the presence of an older woman who's the wise woman, but she's also the comedic, was very crucial to me. Because we have often seen the princess, the witch, or the wise old woman, scary wise old woman. But, you know, it's those tropes, those types. But I wanted it blended into one. And Rafiki is almost the narrator. And there was the technical problem of who sings the Circle of Life, who starts the show, who's the character. Can't just be a chorus member off stage like in a movie. It's not score, it's on stage, it's front and center. So Rafiki as a female singer, as a female voice was the right thing too, and Lebo felt that.
Well, let's go back into the Circle of Life. One of the greatest moments in the American theater, any musical show, is the opening of Circle of Life. Was that easy for you to come up with?
I don't know. It was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Easy to come up with. Yeah, sure. No, I'm kidding you.
No, but that's, like you said, we watched this thing. I sent people to The Lion King last week who had never seen the show, and they were totally blown away by this whole entire production. But they said for all the years they've been going to the theater, they've never seen anything like the Circle of Life, that whole opening of that show.
Well, I knew, because it had been a film, that I wanted to do something that was so three-dimensional and really surrounding the audience. It's also the biggest scene in the movie, in the story. It is when all the animal kingdom comes to bless this baby Lion King, something completely not natural to the animal kingdom, yes? This fairy tale. So I knew that I would use the whole theater. And also I had producers, Tom and Peter, who said, sure, why not? Let's just make sure the aisles are wide enough and that the staircases are there. And so it had to be everything. I mean, birds on Zazu flying in on these kites. And I had seen Japanese theater, not just the bunraku and the owaji, these other kinds of things, but in the much of the grand kabuki, you know, they're not runways that go into the center, but they do have these runways where characters come out. And I thought, well, why not, you know, have this feeling that the characters could actually go up and down these aisles and really engage the audience in a way that film can't. It just can't. Film is two-dimensional, television is two-dimensional, and is far away, and now we do something that only theater can do.
Yeah.
So you have the oral pleasure of it surrounding you, and you have the visual scale of it. And I knew with the hyenas, I mean, it's not just the opening, but when those hyenas come off the stage and they're so creepy and they're sticking their heads into the audience and scaring the kids, you know, with their big mouths, it's also a wonderful moment. But this being able to focus and play with the perspectives and the heights and introduce all the characters, and really for audiences to see the human beings inside those mammoth Bertha legs, the elephant legs, to see those people are there inside, and to reveal the artifice, to reveal the technology, and say, this is the fun part.
Yeah.
You know, the cheetah off the front of the female dancer, watching her head move, and the strings attached to the cheetah head, and the head of the animal moves, and then she manipulates. So the audience is thrilled not just by, oh, this is they don't know what the story is. They don't have to know. They might have seen the movie, but what they're seeing is, oh my God, this is the kind of theater. I don't know. But the first 5 minutes are hard to beat. So how do we beat it? Get all those animals up on stage, close that in one curtain while they go crazy, while there's a stampede that you can't see as they're trying to take everything off and get into their next thing. And we go to a little circle with a flashlight and a cutout of a mouse. And they have to be quiet back there, which is hard. That takes a lot of rehearsal. But then the audience, which has been like this with their vision, goes into what we would in film say an extreme close-up. And that focuses their energy. That little mouse, actually, it's Scar, actually. It's Scar and then the mouse. But just even seeing Scar with, you know, the head moving up and then getting that shadow puppet that comes across the thing. That was the only thing you could do. You know, there are things that, when you say easy, like what do you do after you've just blown your wad on the biggest opening? You kind of don't have a choice. You have to find out what that is. And the story needs to begin. The story needs to be told, and the dialogue starts.
It's beautiful what you've done. And like I said, 25 years later, we're sitting here, like I said, 110 million people falling in love with, you know, this Disney production all around the world. Back to that, I remember talking to Harold Prince, and he said, Fiddler on the Roof in all these different languages, especially Chinese, they loved the show because it was about family.
Right.
And I was going to ask you, this is played in all these different languages. You've seen it all around the world. You've been there. You've cast them. Why do you think people have fallen in love with this musical and continue to fall in love with this musical all around the world in different languages?
Because it's their story. Because they know that story. Now, it's well done, so that helps, right? I mean, the music is beautiful. The combination of what Elton did and Lebo, you know, this Western pop music with this South African style of choral singing, and these two individual, because not folk music, it is particularly Lebo's, but it's within a tradition, Lebo M's tradition. And even though it's 5 African languages, that I'm sure there are people in the audience occasionally who understand all 5 languages, but no, not generally. But it doesn't matter. It's like you go to see Tosca or Madame Butterfly in Italian and read the subtitles, or who cares? As soon as you following the exact translation wouldn't make it a better experience. In fact, what I love is the sound of the languages. And so it transcends our separations. It transcends our differences, because that story, the prodigal son story, the coming of age story, the brothers fighting, whether it's Hamlet or some other story, you know, of the death of the king by the jealous brother, or the one who's going to usurp his throne. These happen everywhere. That's why Shakespeare is done. How many beautiful Japanese Shakespeare's are there? Kurosawa is one of the greatest director of Shakespeare movies, and he does it in his language. But the story belongs to so many different cultures. The interesting about, I saw Fiddler on the Roof in Japan, so I saw Japanese Fiddler on the Roof. Of course it works because it's a family thing, but it still is a particular story from singer, Bathsheba's singer, in the Russian, you know.
Shalom Aleichem.
Yeah, Shalom Aleichem, excuse me. So you're still being taken somewhere. The thing about The Lion King is it isn't Johannesburg, you know, it's not Cape Town, it's not New York City, it is the animal kingdom. Now, the African animal kingdom specifically, but not specifically, because I never went to Africa till we were doing the English version of The Lion King. Then for press, Lebo and myself and the woman playing Rafiki were brought to South Africa. And I went out on the animal, you know, safaris, and I'm not a jerk, but I did see, I kept looking at the animals and go, especially the ostriches. They're so dreary looking. I mean, they're nasty, they're gray and brown, and mine are purple and orange and full of plumes and this and that. So, you know, I take great liberties in the design of, obviously, those are, our animals are their own unique Lion King animals, right? They don't, they're the way the people interpret the animal kingdom. So there's no attempt at reality there. So in that sense, this is going to relate to animals in India. It's going to relate to animals in Brazil. It's going to transcend, you know, we created it here in New York, but it's hardly a New York story. It's a human story in animal guise.
Let's talk about the costumes. You also did a beautiful job designing these costumes. You love that aspect of designing them for The Lion King, right?
Yes, I adored it.
Yeah.
Because it's not costumes, it's character, right? I mean, you can't, what are you until you see the whole kit and caboodle of mask, costume, or puppet costume? It's how are you going to do a giraffe? I think the giraffes were one of the first things I designed, the giraffes and the zebras, before I went to the humans, before I went to the lions. Because, okay, giraffes, they tell you what they need to be: tall, four-legged, long necks. And so, yes, I thought, okay, I will use stilts. But because of this commitment to showing the artifice, I said, you're going to see where the dancers are attached to the stilts. I'm not going to try and hide that connection in a full costume. Also, you will see the face of the dancer, but off his head will be this long mask with the giraffe head at the end of it. So when he moves and goes up and down, he's able to control it. But his body, you're completely aware of the dancer, and it makes it that much more frightening, magical, daring, all of it. So that was one of the first ones. And then the zebra was a ball. Because, you know, okay, so it's like a horse. You know, these aren't cats. These are big creatures. So trying to figure out how the human is in the midst of it, and what part. So I think in that case, the human head, there is the neck and because they don't want to be that tall. So there's the neck of the zebra and the head. But then he gets to move. So the legs, you get the dancer's movement here. But then like the cheetah, so the fun for me was figuring out where's the human in the midst of this, and how do then you manipulate all the other parts of the animal, legs and paws and everything.
Because there's nothing like The Lion King. There is no musical, there is no show like Disney's The Lion King that you have put together, because you're such a visual director. I mean, what you do, like I said, the last time I went to the show, I was sitting next to a Korean family who didn't speak English, and they had the time of their life figuring out this show. They loved everything about it, because I talked to them at intermission. Like you said, it's about family, it's about everybody. And you do masks and costumes, and it's so visual to look at, and you can hear the story without knowing the language.
Right. I love that. I think that's a very powerful medium. And dance does that. So this is really dance, music, theater, puppetry, dance, music, theater. You know, it's not a play with music put to it.
No, I know nothing is ever easy, but I remember talking to you, I think it was opening night or right after the show had opened. We had never seen anything like The Lion King before. We had never seen the kind of things you brought to the stage before. And that's what
I've done it before. You just hadn't seen it.
I had seen Wandarian, I had seen all your beautiful
there you
shows.
Go,
but I've seen all your stuff. But I mean, I just figured for a Broadway musical like this, and you took such a beloved Disney film and expanded it and created this incredible Disney musical that is now beloved by millions of people. Like I said, 110 million people. How many shows are seen by that many people with these 20 global productions that have been seen all around the world? It doesn't happen. There's like 5 musicals that have traveled around the world at that scope. So as I'm sitting here with you, like 25 years, and like just what you've done with this show, what it means to you.
Oh,
Are there
God.
words? I mean, are there words just sort of?
Not exactly.
Yeah, but I
You
mean, is
know,
there a feeling, or you know?
it's hard to, because I want bigger, better words
Yeah.
than what I'm going to do right now. First of all, it's given me tremendous freedom as an artist. So the freedom to pick and choose what I want to do. And that's rare for artists to be able to do that. So I have to love things.
Yeah.
And that has meant a lot to me. It's given me financial freedom, but also artistic freedom. Because I can always, a lot of my projects that I want to do are out of the box.
Yeah.
They're original, they're not normal, or they're not usual. It still is not a no-brainer to say they're just going to do whatever I want to do, because it's not going to happen that way.
Yeah.
But it has given me a foundation. And I can always hearken back to it, like in The Lion King. At that time, these producers, Tom Schumacher, Peter Schneider, Michael Eisner, they didn't know what it was going to be, but they didn't censor me. You know, they gave me freedom, and if there was something that they had doubts about, then I would find another way. It was an incredibly good collaboration, because a lot of people said, how are you going to work with Disney? You know, because I'm from the avant-garde or from the off-Broadway or whatever. But we were after the same thing, which is to create a kind of theater, and they knew, maybe not Michael, but Tom definitely knew what world theater was. He had done the Olympic Arts Festival. So he knew what Bunraku, he knew, maybe not all of them, but he knew all the different forms that could possibly have potential for this storytelling. So working with the most commercial company in the world, doing the most uncommercial thing to their property, set a trend that has been repeated sometimes, but it makes me feel proud if other artists got that opportunity. If I've inspired, I mean, War Horse came after The Lion King, but look, it had the horse as the star of War Horse. And it's not just the story that's the star, it's the way those puppeteers and the designer, how they were able to make that horse come alive. That isn't just marvelous, it's moving. And I wanted people to be moved by the art form. There's a terrible word that American has in its culture, which is spectacle. The French call theater le spectacle. But we think of spectacle as being contentless. And I beg to differ big time. That's why the opening of The Lion King works the way it does. Because certain things touch you without words in a much deeper way than things with words. And the same with language. I am touched by the opening chant of The Lion King when the Rafiki sings, "Na te konyo," and I'm not going to do it now because that would be pathetic. But that gets me. That's like a laser going to the right to my heart and into my soul. And I don't even want to know what she's saying, because I know what she's saying. And if it's not what she thinks she's saying, that's okay too. You know, to give that opportunity for each level of person to hook in wherever they want to hook in. I've met so many people who hate Broadway musicals, but they're surprised that they like The Lion King. They may not like every song in The Lion King. There may be ones that are too cute or too commercial, which may be the most popular songs of The Lion King. But what they do like is maybe the moment when the lionesses pull the silks out of their eyes. That might be their favorite moment, because that's inspired by an ancient Japanese style of theater, because it's sophisticated theater, but children know those aren't silks, those are tears. So there's this sort of interesting balance of how people can hook in to The Lion King at whatever level they hook into any live theater, any entertainment.
Yeah.